All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome on into the Auburn Daily Show, episode 6 of the Auburn Daily Show. Lance Daw here with you. Got a jam-packed show for you guys today. Going to be talking about a lot of different things on today's episode. Going to be talking some Auburn basketball. Going to be talking about some way too early top 25 stuff. Going to be looking at the national scene for college football. Really excited to get into this today. We're also going to talk a little Auburn baseball. Auburn baseball's ranked, which is something that I didn't know that I would ever say at any point this season. Really beating the expectations right now is Auburn baseball. On today's episode, though, wanted to start it off with some Auburn basketball talk because I absolutely love Auburn basketball. I absolutely love seeing the way that the program has just kind of climbed to the point that it is right now. And I wanted to just kind of take a moment to appreciate where the program is under Bruce Pearl. And I wanted to take a moment. I wanted to go back in time. I wanted to just talk about what the program was experiencing. And I want to take it all the way back to 2011, actually. I want to take this all the way back to 2011. This was Tony Barbie's first year as head coach for the Auburn Tigers. And in this inaugural season for Coach Barbie, Auburn went 11-20. And quite frankly, was not very good, especially on the offensive end. According to Ken Pom, they were one of the worst offenses in the entire country in 2011. We saw marginal improvement in 2012. We saw a 15-16 record from Tony Barbie's Auburn Tigers. And then in 2013, we saw just a massive dip. We just saw a pathetic dip to 9-23. And after a 2014 season where Auburn went 14-16, it's like, okay, the program's not, it doesn't really have a sense of direction, a sense of purpose. And I think a lot of people were just kind of fed up with what Barbie had done. Of course, the expectations at Auburn weren't incredibly high. But I will say, at this point, Auburn hadn't had a winning season in 5 years. Last time they had a winning season was 2009. 24-12. So in 2015, well, technically it's the 2014-15 season that we're talking about here. 2014-15 season, Bruce Pearl was hired. He immediately matched Tony Barbie's best season with a 15-20 record. Everybody remembers the NCAA tournament run that Auburn, or excuse me, the SEC tournament run that Auburn went on in 2015. Mississippi State, Texas A&M, and LSU in back-to-back before losing to Kentucky in the semifinals. So we've gotten to see just some ineptitude under Coach Barbie. And then Bruce Pearl was hired, and immediately he shows signs of life, beating some solid teams, including the Aggies and the Tigers of LSU. Then in 2016, you go 11-20. So you have a little bit of a dip again, but you do a couple of impressive things that season. First of all, the offense, the three-point shooting was relative at times. And then also you beat Kentucky 75-70. Was just one of my favorite college basketball games of all time. Kareem Canty, Bryce Brown going off in that game to secure a victory for the Tigers. Absolutely love that game. And it was that moment, after seeing just so many years of ineptitude, it was at that moment that I think people, even after the SEC tournament run the year prior, I think a lot of people realized, but okay, there's some potential here. There's some life here. This is a relatively dead program with not a lot of direction. They took a gamble with Bruce Pearl. And here we are. We've beaten Kentucky. Auburn faltered down the stretch that season, but I think people were still very optimistic. Next season, you get your first winning season in 8 years. It took 8 years to get a winning season. 18-14 was the record in 2017. It's been a climb. It has been a climb. Since 2009, it took 8 years. It took 8 years to get back to where you were even around 500. You got close in 2015 with a 15-20 record, but finally, you were able to get it done. And this team, I really, really liked this team. They unfortunately, defensively, were not the best in the world, but offensively, they had some game. I really, really like this team. You had T.J. Dunnins, who was one of my favorite players. Jared Harper, my favorite basketball player, period. Mustafa Heron. You had Ronnie Johnson, the backup. You had D'Angelo Purifoy. You had Bryce Brown Smith, two guys that have been forgotten about in Auburn basketball history. I really liked this team. I really did. And a really impressive win for me, even though they weren't a great team at the time. But Auburn was showing life. You know, they were beating Alabama. They were beating TCU. That was a game that Austin Wiley went off in, I believe. They actually swept Alabama. Everybody remembers that three-pointer that Kime made at the end of that 20-point route back in 2016, this 2016-17 season. And also, you got to win over LSU. Horace Spencer with an emphatic dunk that he may or may not have walked on to finish that one off. I mean, you were getting to see these players kind of pop up in the program where it's like, okay, I see some athleticism, I see some talent, and I also see some decent coaching. I like what I'm seeing. Okay. We're getting to see life. 18-14. Offensively, the team knew how to score. They knew how to put it in the basket, especially from three. According to Kim Palm, they shot 36.6%, which was 94th nationally. And then they had an offensive adjusted efficiency of 111.9, which was 54th nationally at the time. The team was really starting to figure out what was going on. And then in 2018, a little bit of a breakthrough. So it's taken just about since 2009 to get to a point where Auburn basketball was even somewhat relevant. And here we are back in the fold, 26-8 in 2018. And this was that team that absolutely fell apart down the stretch and defensively was nowhere to be found at times. And they got run on by a couple different teams there at the end. They had Arkansas drop 91 on them. They got routed by Alabama in the SEC tournament. And then they got absolutely pummeled by Clemson. But still, it was a banner year for a variety of reasons. Number one, obviously, being you got to I believe we tied for did we tie this year? I feel like I'm pretty sure we tied for the SEC title this season. Also very, very undersized, but offensively they could light it up. Really, really good free throw shooting team. Could also shoot the three ball as well. We were getting to see signs of life after just 7 or 8 years prior. The team didn't know how to put the ball in the basket. And Tony Barbie was the head coach, and there was just no sense of direction whatsoever. Bruce Pearl steps in, kind of gets everybody's crap together. And we've marched from 15-20, 11-20, 18-14 to 26-8. 26-8. And then in 2019, everybody knows what happens in 2019. What a peak for the Auburn Tigers. Is it the peak? We'll have to find out. But it was definitely one of the peaks, I believe, for this program. A Final Four run. Very impressive shooting by the Tigers. It just absolutely went on a tear to end the season after Chuma Okeke made that three to beat Georgia way back. I think it was late November. Made a three to beat Georgia, 78-75, I believe was the final score there. Auburn rattled off win after win after win. They got a comeback win against Alabama. They beat top 5 team in Tennessee. I believe Tennessee was at the time. Won 4 games in a row in the SEC tournament. Blew out Tennessee in the SEC tournament title game. And then they beat Kansas, North Carolina, Kentucky in back-to-back games, and then lost to Virginia in the Final Four. Don't really want to talk about that today. But point being, the team was doing some unprecedented things. And all things considered, I think that fans at the time didn't really appreciate it. I think a lot of people appreciated it, but I don't think a lot of people realized, myself included, like what it had taken to get to this point, right? Again, to go back to what I was saying, it took 8 years for Auburn to even get to 500. They didn't have a season where they broke 500. And then all of a sudden they find themselves in the Final Four 5 seasons in to Bruce Pearl's tenure. And then in 2020, it was a senior-laden team, 25-6. They couldn't shoot a lick, but they played decent defense. And I think that people will always remember that team for the clutch moments that they had, won every single overtime game that they were in. I believe they won 3 straight overtime games at one point, if I'm not mistaken. That team was really clutch, and they started the season off, I believe, 20-2. 2021 was a COVID year. I think everybody would like to forget about it. 13-14, nobody cares. And then this past season, 28-6. It's so crazy to think about these past 6 seasons as opposed to the 6 seasons prior to that. Because 5 out of the past 6 seasons, you've had a 500 record or better, and you've actually you've been winning at a very high clip. 26-8, 30-10, 25-6, 28-6, and then the 6 seasons prior to that, you barely sniffed it. You barely came even close. The flip around for this program, the direction that it's heading right now, it's done a complete 180. It's done a complete 180 after Tony Barbee left and after Bruce Pearl was hired. It has completely flipped the script, and a lot of people are on the bandwagon now. And I'm not saying, look at you, you haven't watched Auburn basketball for the past decade. You can't appreciate it as much as I can. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I want people to be pulling for the Auburn Tigers and their basketball program. I want people to be able to come and appreciate this now, because there wasn't a lot of support back then. There wasn't a lot of support back in 2014 and 2015 and 2016 when Auburn was getting beat by 40 in games against Vanderbilt. That's not an exaggeration. There were games where Auburn was quite literally down by 30 to 40 points against teams like Vanderbilt. It was ugly. It was ugly. Everybody remembers the days where Simeon Bowers was running the point god for Bruce Pearl's Tigers. We're past those days now. We've got all these 5-star recruits, all these 5-star transfers coming into the program. Kids want to be here now. This is a spot on the college basketball map. People want to come play and watch Auburn play basketball. Isn't it crazy that we just picked up a transfer that decommitted from LSU and his final schools were Gonzaga, Michigan, Texas Tech, and the G League? He chose us. He chose us over all of those programs. Auburn basketball is legitimate right now. And I know that people like to make the joke on social media, or some people are serious and say, oh, well, we're a blue blood now. Look at us. We're all cool. We're not a blue blood yet. But I mean, these past 6 seasons, you've definitely seen a rise in talent, in fan support, in revenue, in relevance. I think that we are truly in a golden age of Auburn basketball. And I think people just need to take a moment, instead of bashing the team for, oh, well, they didn't do this right at the end of the season. Oh, well, their guards, they did this. And I'm guilty of this myself. Instead of criticizing them for all of their shortcomings right now, I would like for, during this offseason, sure, let's look ahead. Let's be serious about what's going to happen this next season, because I think that you can build on some of the things you did this season. You can figure out how to not peak too early. I actually want to talk about that in a second. But you can start to adjust things. You can really build on this foundation that you've laid. And I think next season could be special. But we can do that. But at the same time, I want people to just kind of reflect. Think about where this program was 7 years ago. Think about where it was. It had no purpose, no sense of direction, didn't know where it was going to go, didn't know how to really play basketball at points, it looked like. But now here they are, one of the best teams in the entire nation, pulling in all this talent. Let's just be thankful that we get to have this. I know that everybody really likes football. I love football. I love the football program. I absolutely love Auburn football. But let's just be happy with the fact that our basketball team's even in the position to do things like start a year 22-1 or 20-2. There's one more thing though. I do want to criticize the team just a little bit. And it's not necessarily the team, it's a narrative that's been thrown out there about the program. I think we need to stop the narrative that Auburn's good at peaking late, because I think that us as fans will get into this mindset that, like, oh, well, the team is supposed to be something special. I think that we need to take a step back here. Trey Lee, watching on Facebook, said, I remember getting a pair of Antoine Mason shoes in 2014. That team was a lot of fun. My experience with the 2014 Auburn Tigers, and I'm glad you brought the 2014 team up, Trey. That's actually really cool that you got a pair of Mason shoes. It's dope. It's actually really cool. There was I got to ball boy a few games, and being a ball boy is like during timeouts you would come and you wipe the floor like they would let little kids do it back in the day. And whenever I was a young snot-nosed kid, they let me do it for a few games. And I remember I lived in Montgomery at the time, and I came up to Auburn, and I was going to ball boy for the Florida game. I can actually pull it up here. It was February 19th. It was against Florida. And Florida was really good that year, I believe. Florida went 36-3. 36-3 that season. And Auburn lost that game 71-66. And I was sitting there ball boying. I didn't really know much about Auburn basketball at the time. All I knew is that I was very introverted, and I just hated it. Like, I hated having to talk to all these different people. I hated the fact that I was on the floor and everybody could see me. I was so uncomfortable, and I didn't know necessarily what was going on. And I remember my dad telling me, you're going to look back on this and say, I cannot believe I acted the way I did. I cannot believe, because you're going to look back and you're going to realize what sort of privilege and what sort of opportunity you got to even be on the court. And little did I know, he was exactly right. I actually wrote a high school paper about that night. It was an opportunity that I took for granted. And you look at where the program is now. I mean, it's just crazy what's happened in a matter of a few short years, and you can really take for granted getting opportunities like that. It was really, really, really cool. Not as cool as getting a pair of Antoine Mason shoes, though. That's actually dope. But to go back to what I was saying earlier about the narrative that Auburn basketball peaks late, they've done it twice during Bruce Pearl's tenure. And I'm not saying this just to criticize the program. I'm saying this as, like, for me as a fan, I guess, to not get my hopes up and to not to stir up what I believe is a relatively false narrative. Because look, in 2015, obviously Auburn makes that SEC tournament run. You peaked at the right time, right? In 2016, you finished the season 11-20. You actually finished the season, the last 10 games, 2-8. 2-8 in 2016. In 2017, you started off the year 14-8, then you finished it 4-6 and lost to Missouri in the SEC tournament. In 2018, Auburn started off 26-8. Or excuse me, they started off 21-3. Then they went 5-5 in their last 10 games. 2019, everybody knows what happened. They peaked at the right time. So that's twice in Bruce Pearl's tenure. In 2020, 25-6, the team that couldn't shoot worth a rip. I say that partially joking, but statistically it's true. 6-4 is what Auburn was after starting the season off 20-2. Last 10 games, 6-4. So you had 2-8, 4-6, 5-5, and 6-4. In 4 out of these 5 seasons that I'm talking about. During the COVID year, nobody cares about it, but I will note Auburn was 3-7 in their last 10 games. And then this past season, everybody knows their last 11, 6-5 after losing that Arkansas game, kind of just showed the potential downfall of what was happening with this team But again, it was a great year. We talked about that a couple episodes ago. It's like, don't take away from the fact that this was a phenomenal year for Auburn. But I do want to say the narrative out there that Auburn is good at peaking late. I think that obviously they did it in 2019. They did it in Pearl's first season. But outside of that, they've actually struggled to put it together at the end of the season. I'm curious to see if Pearl is able to rally the troops this next season. I'm curious to see what the guard play looks like down the stretch, because after they've gotten to experience a statistical decline once, I'm curious to see what they do this season. Are they able to adjust? Are they able to be more consistent down the final 10 games or so of the season? Curious to see what happens there. All right. I want to talk a little way too early top 25 stuff. And this is kind of looking at the national perspective. We're going to talk about Auburn a little bit, so just bear with me. I do want to have a conversation about this. So ESPN just a few weeks ago put out their way too early top 25 for the 2022 football season. I am a huge college football junkie. Absolutely love it. I love going over top 25s and projections and stuff. You may knock on me for getting too into preseason magazine culture. Josh Pate of 24/7 Sports would strongly discourage that. But I like getting into it because I think it's fun. But I want to look at this at way too early top 25. And I just kind of want to discuss where Auburn is right now in terms of potentially getting ranked at some point during the season, and should they be close to the top 25 before the season starts. At number one, Alabama is sitting at number one in the way too early top 25, according to ESPN.com. Wasn't the best team of the Nick Saban era this past season, but they got a lot of guys coming in. They returned 6 starters on offense, 7 on defense. Got a transfer from Georgia Tech in Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back there for the Yellow Jackets, transferring in. Bryce Young's back. He's going to be a Heisman favorite yet again. Curious to see what they do with the departure of Jamison Williams and John Mechie. Curious to see how they fill those shoes. It's a lot of production there. Eli Ricks coming in as a defensive back from LSU. They've got some talent coming into the program, but they've also got some serious skill position talent leaving. Can Alabama sustain success? We'll talk about that a lot more as the season gets closer. At number 2, they have Ohio State. Number 3, they have Georgia. And you may be saying, why is the team that won the national title that brings back their quarterback at number 3? I'm going to be honest with you, considering they bring back 9 starters on the offense and 5 on defense. I don't know. They did lose a lot of talent. Like they're going to have like 9 or 10 guys drafted here in just a couple of weeks. When is the NFL draft? Is it within the next couple of weeks? I don't know. Anyway, Texas A&M's at 4, Michigan's at 5, Notre Dame's at 6. I'm going to run down this quickly. Utah's at 7. Don't understand that. Although I will say Cameron Rising is a very solid quarterback. NC State's at 8. I actually do understand this one. NC State's offense, man, with Devin Leary, then they've got a ton of starters coming back. They've got 10 on defense coming back. That's going to be a fun team to watch in the ACC. Oklahoma State at 9. Offense is not good enough for me to really think that the Cowboys should be higher. Michigan State at 10 after going 11-2 last season. Clemson at 11, which seems way off. I personally would like to assume that preseason Clemson's a better team than, say, Oklahoma State, but ESPN's got to have a hot take in there. I mean, that's their brand. Number 12, Oregon with Bo Nix. And I don't think enough people are talking about the situation that let's just say Oregon's quarterback, because apparently Bo Nix was not taking first team reps just a couple of days ago during some practice. I think he's going to be the starter. But think about the situation that Oregon's in. I mean, they got Dan Lanning from Georgia to come over. They've got 8 starters coming back on offense, 7 on defense. Got both of their special teams guys coming back. They've got a potential former 5-star starting one way or another, whether it be Ty Thompson or Bo Nix. And they get Georgia week 1, and this is a guy that coached their defense, and their defense brings back less than half of their starters from last season. I think they're set up to potentially spring an upset in week 1. I think that could be an entertaining game. Now, am I saying Oregon is definitively going to win that game? No. And we'll do picks during the actual week of the game. which will be a lot of fun. Hopefully, I'm able to interact with chat at that point. But Oregon at 12, Houston at 13. Yeah, the team that Auburn lost to in the Birmingham Bowl. Well, apparently, according to ESPN, they're the 13th best team in the country heading into next season. But again, this is way too early, top 25. Wake Forest at 14. Dude, Wake Forest was good last season. They were really good last season. They got eight offensive starters coming back, and they score a lot of points. That's all you need to know. Iowa at 15, Baylor at 16, Oklahoma at 17, BYU at 18, Cincinnati at 19. A massive fall from grace for the Bearcats, and they do lose just about they lose everybody and their mother off of that defense that was really good last season. Also lose quarterback Desmond Ridder. Arkansas is at 20, a little too low for my taste, but it's whatever. They do lose a lot of guys, lose all but 3 of their defensive starters. Kentucky at 21, also, again, a little low for my taste, but whatever. USC at 22, Ole Miss at 23, Wisconsin at 24, and then South Carolina at 25. Let's go through here, count quickly the amount of SEC schools. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see. 5, 6, 7. Is that legitimately half the conference that ESPN has ranked in the top 25? Dadgum, wow. This could be a banner year for the SEC in terms of quarterback play. I don't think I've talked about it on this show yet, but my gosh, the SEC's got a lot of potential at quarterback, and they got a lot of guys coming back that could be really exciting to watch. But the way too early top 25 for ESPN rounds out with the Gamecocks. After finishing 7-6 last season, got them at number 25. Got 8 offensive starters, 6 on defense coming back. And then they've got Spencer Rattler, Austin Stogner, both transferring in from the University of Oklahoma. That's going to be a really fun team to watch with Shane Beamer at the helm. Overachieved in year one. I want the Gamecocks to succeed. I don't hate them, but I have this feeling of dread that they're not going to impress everybody like they think, like people think they might. I want them to do that. I'm probably going to end up projecting them to go like 8-4 or something like that. And that I think it's week 2 that they play Arkansas. Gosh, that's going to be a fun game. If I could go to that game, I would. But it rounds out with South Carolina at 25. And the question I kind of wanted to ask was, should Auburn be in the conversation for a top 25 spot? And quite honestly, I think that Auburn is going to end up having a more successful season than some of these teams here at the bottom of the top 25, but I don't see any reason why to put a 6-7 team into that top 25 preseason. Although we've talked about the schedule, Auburn gets their first 5 games at home. If they're able to beat Penn State, Missouri, and LSU, which who knows, they could go 0-3 in those games. Quarterback position could be an absolute flop. Auburn could go 4-8, 3-9 next season, and Brian Harson's booted. That could legitimately happen. What I'm leaning towards, though, Auburn's offense figuring it out. I'm leaning towards Auburn finding ways to win against Penn State and LSU specifically. And I think they're 5-0 heading into that matchup in Athens against Georgia before they get smacked and shown the door. But I think that Auburn will finish the year ranked. And we actually had a poll. I put a poll up on YouTube, and we'll probably put a poll up on Twitter asking, do you think Auburn football finishes the season ranked in 2022? I'm saying yes. I think that they will. There's a lot. You can talk all you want about preseason magazine culture and way too early top 25s and projections, and Phil Steele saying that Penn State would be the biggest turnaround team of 2021 and being completely wrong. Love you, Phil Steele, but that was oof. You can dive into all of that, right? You can dive into this like we're talking about it right now, but you truly don't know what teams are really about until you see them step onto the field. And so we're gonna have to see these spring games. We're gonna have to see Auburn's quarterbacks. We're gonna have to see all these different guys go through fall camp. We're gonna have to see more definitive starters, not just for Auburn, but for everybody. We're gonna need to get closer to the season, really find out, okay, let's get an idea of what some of these teams are about. But going over this stuff excites me still because I hate the offseason. Despise it. Although one more thing here before we wrap up the show. During the offseason, a little baseball's played. And some of you may not know this, but Auburn baseball is currently ranked right now in the this week's Baseball America Top 25. Auburn currently 19-9 right now. They're one of 6 SEC teams ranked in this week's Baseball America Top 25. The Tennessee Volunteers are ranked first. Arkansas is ranked third. Ole Miss is ranked 7. Wow, don't know what noise I just made. Georgia is ranked 17th. Vanderbilt is 19th. And then Auburn rounds out the poll at 25. Excuse me. You can go and check out this article over at auburndaily.com. Zach Blackerby details Auburn being in the top 25. And the reason that they're in the top 25 is because they just went on the road and they just won a series against the number 13 LSU Tigers. And if you want to read the recap of the entire series, our guy Lindsey Crosby did a phenomenal job of putting together a breakdown over at auburndaily.com. If you want to go check that out. Again, it was written by Lindsey Crosby, a recap of Auburn's series win over the LSU Tigers in Baton Rouge, might I add. This is what the excerpt said in the Baseball America Top 25 about Auburn. Auburn debuts in the rankings after winning a series at Louisiana State. In Thursday's opener, Auburn did all of its scoring in a 6-run 5th inning that was highlighted by a 3-run homer off of the bat of shortstop Brody Moore. LSU fought to get back in the game, getting to within a run in the 9th and then putting this tying run on second base. But right-hander Blake Burkhalter struck out Jacob Berry and got Jordan Thompson a flyout to end the game. And I forget who is in right field for Auburn, but they caught the ball and then just slammed their shin into a bench. It looked like it hurt, but they caught a dub there. Auburn secured the series with a win on Saturday with a 6-4 win after dropping the middle game. Sophomore right-hander Joseph Gonzalez mostly avoided the big inning after he worked around the 9 hits he allowed, limiting the LSU to 3 runs in 6 innings along the way. And first baseman Sonny Teixeira led the offense by going 4 for 5 with a double, a home run, and 3 RBIs. And I believe that Teixeira, his on-base percentage right now is first nationally. And I got to watch. I wasn't able to watch the entire series, but the 2 at-bats I watched, LSU did not want to pitch to this kid. There was literally one at-bat where they 4-0 walked him. It was just like, chase this pitch, I guess, but we're not even going to give you a chance to swing at something. Sonny Teixeira, Auburn's thick king, in the words of Lindsey Crosby. But yeah, Auburn baseball is on the come up. They were predicted to finish 7th in the SEC West, if I'm not mistaken. Predicted to finish 7th in their division. I may be wrong on that, but I believe that's true. And here they are at 19-9. 19-9, and they've found out how to score a little bit. I'm very impressed with the Tigers and what they've done this season. I believe they've got a midweek game against UAB, if I'm not mistaken, and then they play Vanderbilt. Is the series this week. It's going to be interesting to see what Auburn does against them. Also, something I've completely missed until pulling up a game to watch for a little bit. What a fall from grace for Mississippi State. They're like 16-11 or something like that right now. After going to the national title last year. Wolf. And I guess that's Mississippi State slander to finish off the show today. How about that? Anyway, all right, that's going to do it for today's episode of the Auburn Daily Show. Look, if you're not already, please go ahead and follow us on our social medias at SI_Auburn on Twitter and at Auburn Daily on Facebook. You can keep up with our content over at auburndaily.com. That's going to do it for today's episode of the Auburn Daily Show. Thank you guys so much for watching. We're going to be back tomorrow at 4 p.m. every single weekday. Going to be talking some Auburn spring ball. Going to be talking some Auburn basketball a little bit more. Tigers may be in the running for some transfers. Also, Julian Phillips, a 5-star kid that also decommitted from the LSU Tigers. Is Auburn in the running for him? Going to be talking about all that and more coming up this week. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day, everybody, and God bless.